Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of The Remote Worker. My name is Han Talbot, known online as Han Meets World, and I'm so incredibly excited to begin this podcast journey with you. No matter what I've done in life, remote working always seems to be a common theme. From taking extra language classes, sat outside a Spanish village bar as a teenager, all the way through to working in various cafes, offices, gardens, and basically every form of transport as an adult. It's something that I know I've gravitated towards and enjoyed for a very long time. The road to remote working is a windy one, and my hope for this podcast is to provide a little more insight into the life of a remote worker, the different lifestyles, the different jobs, the different ways you can access this flexible lifestyle for yourself, and maybe, just maybe, link up with a few incredible people along the way. Kicking things off, I'll be talking to the fantastic Kash Bhattacharya, also known as the Budget Traveller. Kash is a full-time travel blogger and, as he would say, has been travelling in style on a budget for 10 years, challenging people to think differently about budget travel. We'll be chatting more about the ins and outs of full-time travel blogging, what travel could look like next, and more about how to meet like-minded people while on the road full-time. So grab yourself a cup of tea, a coffee, or do you know what, something stronger if you like, and let's get started. Kash, thank you so much for being on The Remote Worker. You are our first guest, so thank you for being here with us.
No pressure, Han.
No, I'm very excited. So, Kash, straight in, one word to describe your remote lifestyle. Go.
Unpredictable.
Ooh, okay. Can you give us a bit more?
Yeah, when you are embracing a lifestyle of remote working, you're embracing a lifestyle of a lot of uncertainty because before the pandemic, being a freelancer, one of the reasons, we'll go into this later, one of the reasons why I embraced remote working as a lifestyle was because it gave me flexibility to plan my life around my work. And my nature of my work as the content creator, travel blogger, that I'm often invited on trips on last minute notice. So remote working really works well for me because I can bolt it onto trips. But those trips never confirmed till maybe 48 hours in advance. So suddenly you're on a plane and you're in Italy, you're in Bologna where I am now.
So jealous.
And it's even more unpredictable now because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So it's even more difficult remote working, but it's still possible.
Well, do you know what? Why don't we talk a bit more about what a day-to-day looks like for you? I mean, obviously the last year and a half, of course, as for everybody, has been different. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
But on a typical day, pandemic aside, what does a day in the life look like for you? Be as detailed as you fancy.
It's very simple. A typical day in the life of me and my partner, Sina, who does all the videos for the blog. You know very well.
She's epic.
We would like to wake up. We're not the earliest risers. We like to get up around about 8. We like to have an hour of drinking coffee and consuming media and getting up to scratch of what's happening in the world. We're slow starters in the morning. Then we like to have a workout that's been constant in the last 2 to 3 years and a lifesaver in terms of mental health. When you have a life of living on the road or wherever you are, it's important to have a rough kind of schedule of things. And as many other remote workers will probably also tell you that being fit and having some form of physical activity is a really good way to start the day. So behind me, for the benefit of your viewers, I'm in the student hotel in Bologna, which is a kind of hybrid hotel student accommodation space, and they really cater well for nomads. And they have a gym. The gym comes in very handy and it's free to use. There is a swimming pool to my left here, which is not common in a lot of student hotels. So you can go for a swim in the morning if you want to, and that's free for guests. So you usually start off with a nice workout that gets the blood pumping, and then we have a good breakfast, and then we start working, and we work generally till 6, 7 until our brains stop working. And then the fun part of remote working is that in the evenings you are free to explore and suddenly become a tourist, and you can go and walk around the city for hours. And on late summer evenings, like they are now in Bologna, you can be out till 12 o'clock walking around and just feeling free. So it's good.
Oh, amazing. So the typical, just to get into the real nitty gritty, so typical tasks could, on your day, could be anything from video editing, shooting video?
All kinds of this. As I said, unpredictable describes our lifestyle and our work. No day is the same as the other. Now we were on the road since the beginning of the summer. We were in Portugal in May. which is a very popular remote working destination that you love, I know very much.
I know.
We were in Lisbon when Lisbon was practically empty, and the only tourists that we saw were nomads who were long-term traveling through Portugal at that time. And we were in Czech Republic in June. So we were filming there, and we're currently wrapping up two videos for the tourism board there. And we're writing some guides for them, which you'll see soon on the blog. So we're working on that now. And then we are back in Berlin on Friday and catching up with friends and work, and then back on the road again in the second half of August for another project, which is yet to be confirmed. So it's very stop-start, intense summer so far, but it's good.
Yeah, it's so exciting. No, it's good to know. I feel like people like to know, kind of get a flavour for things. Obviously, like between you and I, kind of know what you generally do, and it must be like, we can talk about it all day. But like for a newbie, for example, they're kind of thinking from the outside, what does actually being a travel blogger look like? Because it's not just all Instagrams, reels, and tasting wine, and like being able to explore beautiful cities. So
it can be very glamorous from the outside, but from the inside, it's running a business on the road has a lot of challenges in terms of what people normally do in the stability of their home or from their home base. You're actually running a business and choosing to also it's that balance between work and also having a life outside of work, which is important the older you grow, I found.
Yeah. What's your what's hot wellness tip for being able to find that balance?
Best tip, I would say, is having some sort of a consistent routine. Try and have a few things in place and try and eat as well as possible. Diet was a big problem when I was initially embracing this lifestyle back in 2012 when I went full nomad and I started traveling. I really was not eating very well.
I feel like that's part of the process, isn't it, though? That's part of the process.
Exactly. And when you're living life from paycheck to paycheck and you're living life from hostel to hostel, as I did at that time, I was still carrying on as if I was a backpacker and traveling and ending up drinking on a Wednesday night and then waking up feeling hungover and not being able to do work properly. And that was not really good.
Yeah.
But I've always been workaholic. That's been drilled into me, I guess, from my early age. Working before I was a nomad, I was working in a magazine, producing magazines, and we had a very intense work schedule. So that discipline was there always. I think you have to have a consistent routine, and also, I mentioned this before, take care of your health.
Yeah.
Because it can play a big difference in your productivity and your overall being.
Makes total sense. Yeah. So you touched on briefly about what you did pre going digital nomad, remote worker. Do you want to tell us a little bit more, and then kind of why you took the leap towards remote working?
I'm by nature not a good employee. I'm too independent. I'm too stubborn. I'm too inflexible sometimes. Maybe I'm flexible. Maybe I'm harsh on myself. But unpredictability of being in a job where day to day it's different. I don't like the sameness of working in an office and being in the same place every day. I like every day waking up and, okay, where am I going to work from today? And that brings it has its challenges, like trying to find a place which has good Wi-Fi and where you can work from. So that's why I love, for example, some hostels and some places like the Student Hotel, because it has a set range of facilities that are consistent throughout all the properties throughout the whole of Europe. So I know I can expect a good gym. I know I can find a place to work from. I can get a stable internet connection. And that really is a big luxury and comfort when you have this life of remote working. So those are the things that are important to me. And this is what happens when I go into a question and I forget that.
No, it's all good.
So why I got into remote working was because, I really like the lifestyle.
Yeah.
It challenges me. It's a creative burst of energy. You notice yourself. That
I was going to say,
step on a plane, step on a train, and you remove yourself. Because the biggest challenge as creators we have is become stuck in a rut. And you're in the same place. And sometimes you need that movement to see new places and stimulate your senses and get new ideas flowing. And also these are great places to collaborate and meet people from other walks of life. And that's also where Student Hotel is really good for remote workers, for example. So.
Absolutely. No, 100%. I feel like I just posted a picture today of being on a riverboat with my laptop, and sometimes it's just getting that fresh inspiration, isn't it? I know for myself, I'm definitely not somebody who's good at being in the same office 5 days a week, 9 to 5, looking at signals.
The great affair is to move, and once you realize that your creative energy comes from constant dislocation and being in spaces where you wouldn't expect yourself to be in, that is exciting. That gives you a nice buzz, you could say. Yeah. That's so important. It doesn't mean you don't have to go to a different country and not jump in a plane. I think many people, when it comes to remote working, the digital nomad lifestyle, they paint it as this glamorous picture of being in Bali or being in some exotic destination by a beach. But the simple joy of traveling and even hopping in a train and going to the next town, or going somewhere which is just half an hour away, but you feel like you're a world away from all your reality. And that's sometimes what I think most people seek, is this difference where they feel something new and different. So
absolutely. Yeah. When you're searching for your Wi-Fi cafes or your student hostels or any hostels, or when you're generally planning a trip, I guess, what do you kind of have as a priority when you're planning? Like, what kind of aspects of that place?
So when we're planning our trips, we're usually looking at hostels or hotels that have good Wi-Fi, they have a common area to work from. Sometimes we stay in Airbnbs. That is also a very, very nice option for us, because sometimes Airbnb properties, if you need to get a lot of work done and we don't want too many distractions, we just want to get up, work out, coffee, breakfast, go for a run, and then start working. Good table space, workspace in Airbnb. So when you search Airbnb, you can find that in the list of criteria: good workspace, business friendly, laptop space in Airbnb. So we find Airbnbs are usually good, but sometimes we'll find something that is cheap and affordable, an apartment for a few weeks or a month, and we'll try to find a good co-working space or a gym nearby, because those are very important for us. So I also do like co-working spaces. They're great places to work from, to meet people. That's what we really enjoy, is connecting with other creatives, and that can often be a source of inspiration and work. It's really important for us in our line of work.
Okay, so going on to meeting new people, give us your best icebreaker, or like what's your go-to when you're like going and talking to a new person?
I don't want to sound too off my own. When you say, so what do you do for a living? I just say I'm a professional travel blogger, and I just see everybody's eyes pop out. They're like, oh no, he's one of those people, who travels around the world for free.
The ones I hear about in the mainstream media. Oh no.
It's just this reaction that I always get. It kind of fills me with dread and also excitement, because it's always interesting to see how people react.
Absolutely.
People always have so many misconceptions about my work and my lifestyle. As you said, it is very misrepresented sometimes in the mainstream media. This horrible word influencer, for example, which is so far from my work and what I do. But yeah, so I just say that, and that's the best icebreaker. And then I get 20,000 questions. They want all my secrets. They're like, how do you do it? How do you make a living?
Check out my blog.
So I keep on thinking I should be jumping on the train of training people how to become a professional travel blogger, like umpteen other bloggers and creatives, what they do. But I've said that's not me. I'll leave it to the trusted hands of Traverse and other people. I'll just get on with what I do and love most.
Yeah, but it's all different, right? Different styles. And no, like, I think what's great about what you do is that you kind of be the example. You're not like this person that's like, come and be like me. You're like, I am the example, but I'll happily answer questions. I think that's what you do very well. And obviously you've got your book as well.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about your book. Like, what was that like? Do you have any plans for another at all?
Yes. Yeah. My book is called The Grand Hostels, Luxury Hostels of the World.
Yeah.
It's now 2 years old. It's in 4 different languages: English, German, French, and soon to be in Korea. And the book is about how this new world of design hostels, I call them luxury hostels. And people say, oh, you mean like luxury hotels? And I say, no, luxury in the sense of experiences. Because I think the real luxury in life is experiences, is meeting people, being in a space where you can work, play, you can go to a bar at the end of the day. You might have a rooftop swimming pool in some of these hostels. And the real luxury also is people. You can feel a connection with the world around you, because I think that's what is missing in travel at the moment is connection. And what we are looking for now in this post-pandemic fatigue world of no connection and being stuck in our own homes for so long is that we want to go out and meet the world again. That's where this book basically describes this whole world of amazing hostels where you can work, play, and it's perfect for nomads because it's a great space to work from. Wi-Fi works in 95% of places. There's still places where you will get shit Wi-Fi and you will get a bad cup of coffee, but you will have so many great experiences in these places. That book documents that. In terms of plans for another book, there is currently no plans for another book.
Okay.
It's just waiting to see how things kind of pan out from here. But there are plans to start a membership for nomads and remote workers who are looking for affordable spaces.
Oh, nice.
That has been obviously one of my biggest challenges as a nomad for the last 10 years is that it's really expensive. I find a lot of these co-living spaces.
And where the trend is obviously taken off as well.
Yeah, co-working, like there are great spaces like Rome outside this space, but they're not really affordable for freelancers or people who are on a shoestring budget, starting up a company and wanting to quit their 9-to-5 lifestyle and get out of their country and go somewhere else. So what I'm trying to find is something that's affordable. So stay tuned.
It's very exciting.
So that if that is your something you're interested in, I've just actually written an article on the blog.
Yes.
Which is an article to the best hostels in Europe for digital nomads and remote workers.
It's epic, and I'm going to make sure I link that below. And when this goes live, absolutely. It's needed. It's great seeing like all these places and things like that, but it's so nice to see more people actually looking at this kind of lifestyle and just being able to create more slow travel, which I don't know about you, but I feel like there is going to be a bigger boom in slow travel. And by slow travel, I mean not just going somewhere for a weekend or a week, going somewhere for a month, 2 months longer, and actually taking time to see a place.
Yeah, it just makes sense from a number of perspectives. It makes sense from a budgetary perspective because when you plan more time in one place, it's easier to get a better rate on your accommodation. You are more productive because you're not moving around. And initially, when I started this lifestyle, I was moving around at a ridiculous pace. And I quickly had burnout issues. So my biggest tip is whenever you want to embrace this lifestyle of remote working, spend more time in each place. Not only is that good for your own health, but it's good for also the local community. It's also more responsible because that's something that is more and more important in the world we live in, is that we are not constantly hopping around like nutters and just burning up the planet, but we're spending more time and embedding yourself in the local community, because that's something I never consciously realized that was part of my work and what I did, but I always found that hostels naturally embed themselves in the local community. So you get to meet people within the community. You're not insulated from the city you live in, because a lot of these spaces that cater for nomads and remote workers are very artificial and they're in their own bubble, and that's not good. And you should really spend time in a city, get to meet locals, make an effort to really get to know the culture. And that's why slow traveling is important. And that is basically going to be a big, huge trend that I know that lots of destinations, with my tourism blogger marketing hat on, I know that lots of destinations are looking to cater towards more long-term stays because they realize it's more sustainable, and it's also, from a financial perspective, it's huge for them. There's a whole raft of countries that are offering special visas now for nomads and remote workers.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking, again, like for people who are not necessarily as enmeshed in the travel, is that a good word to use? Not as I was thinking, is that good? For the people who aren't necessarily as enmeshed in the travel community as yourself, and I'm going to blow my own horn here myself, sustainability, what do you mean by sustainability and sustainable travel?
For me, sustainable travel is human travel. It's travel with a human face. It's traveling with care. It's traveling with empathy. It's traveling with a sense of respect to the place you're in. And that can take many forms. Many people had a crisis of conscience about whether I could be classified as a sustainable traveler, because I promote budget travel and I promote sometimes airlines like EasyJet and Ryanair, which are not so friendly to the environment. But if I take that out of the equation, and I've been doing a lot of train travel recently because it's very affordable and easy when you live in Central Europe rather than when you live in Britain.
I was going to say also, though, it's beautiful taking the train through Central Europe. Oh, my goodness.
It's so easy. And that's one of the things that when I started the blog and I was living in Edinburgh, it's so difficult.
Sure.
To take a train anywhere, it costs so much money.
I was explaining that to people that, okay, our flights might be cheap out of the UK. However, it costs nearly twice as much just to get to the airport itself sometimes.
So expensive. And then also getting the Eurostar and getting to Paris is so expensive just before you even get into Europe. And that's always been the biggest challenge. But I always feel budget travelers, probably Dan and Audrey from Uncommon Minds, they shared a recent great article about how budget travelers have always been more sustainable because they tend to support more local producers. They choose to support independent people. So whether it comes to street food sellers or whether it's staying in hostels, which are naturally non-branded, non-chain, so they're more embedded in the local community. So I always find budget travelers are more sustainable in that sense. And you stay there for 2 days, but you have such a great time. You end up spending 7 days or 2 weeks.
Again, I'm going to go off piece. It's funny you mentioned Dan and Audrey from Uncornered Market. We were on a panel together. I hosted a panel with them at World Travel Market back in 2019, basically, not to massively name drop there. But they made a really great point in their presentation about sustainable travel, of course, can be about environment and supporting the local economy, but also being very mindful and kind, as I'm seeing a lot, this like kind travel can be things like being very wary of who we're taking photos of, did we get certain permissions, and just taking mindfulness to the next level in that respect.
Yeah, just being nice. Like in Italy, our Italian is limited, but we always try and in Sabrina always master a few expressions. So whenever we're ordering food in a bar or something, we try and speak it in Italian, and we always get a smile in return. That immediately sets you apart from the rest.
Absolutely.
So no, I was in Gran Canaria in January. I was very lucky to be in December when things were quite difficult in terms of travel, but Gran Canaria was a green destination, and we were there, and we were at this cafe, and then I will not say where he was from, but he was grunting and drinking his coffee. He was a miserable bugger. And then when the lady came, he finally said one word to her. He said to her, "Gracias."
Oh,
it was not gracias. It was a clever mixture of grazie and gracias.
Yeah.
So it's like Spantan, whatever you want to call this new language. But we were pissing ourselves but fair play to the guy that he actually made an effort. And even if it means some people get put off by mispronouncing, or they might make a fool of themselves. Make a fool of yourself.
Absolutely.
Don't be so self-conscious when you're traveling. Travel liberates you and makes you a freer, happier, better person. So make a few mistakes and crack a joke, get a smile from the waiter, but make an effort because it really endears you and makes tourists more nicer and more human than sometimes the images.
It adds to the experience, and I found also sometimes you end up on the most wildest adventures because of it. So yeah, no, absolutely. When you were starting, either thinking about remote working itself or the budget traveller, did you have a particular mission or like a goal or like a kind of why that motivated you?
I never realized it at the time that I had a mission. I think when you have a calling in life, you just go with what you feel inside. You don't. I used to run a magazine as a business before in Scotland. I lived in Edinburgh for 9 years. I went to university in Scotland, and after that, I launched a magazine for students. I was told to write a business plan, and I had no clue about how to run a magazine. All I knew that I wanted to create a really good magazine which would allow young people to write and gain work experience so that they could get a foot in the door, because I found most young people would not get a foot in the door in working in major publications. But when I remember sitting down with my business manager and said, "What's the why of your mission? What's your mission? What's your aims and objectives?" And I was like, this is all very complicated. This is not in my head at the moment. I just want to go out and make a great magazine. That's all I want to do. And the same thing with the blog was when I started blogging when it evolved from being a hobby into a full-time job, because at the beginning, first 3 years, it was just a hobby. Then in 2012, I wanted to make my life. I really wanted to create a blog which people would get the best tips of how to travel on a budget, either short term or long term. So in many ways, I already had a future good idea of where I wanted to be. And then I discovered the world of hostels, and that became my kind of calling card. And now people come to my blog because they want to find out where the best hostels in X, Y, and Z. And the lifestyle kind of evolved from the mission. So it was never my aim to travel and remote work around the world. And digital nomad, I don't even identify. I've always grown at that term, digital nomad, because again, it's become like influencer. It's become another horrible, dirty word that really doesn't accurately represent. And it's again this culture of trying to box people and put people into boxes.
It's funny. It's funny that I do remember back in like 2016, because I did some research at the time, because I was starting to see all this trend of people working more remotely and things like that. But of course, we didn't know it was remote working at the time, really. I remember seeing digital, I think it was, I Googled how to work from a cafe or something like that. And digital nomad came up. And I remember being so confused by that term. I was like, what does that mean? And then trying to figure it out. And it's just so funny how that's taken off in such a short space of time.
People have been working remotely for as long as civilization, people going into monastic lifestyles and going into huts in the middle of nowhere for months, immersing themselves in pen and paper and trying to write a book and write their thoughts of philosophies about life. This lifestyle has already existed before. It's just now it's evolved into something a bit more, accessible also.
Absolutely. So that was a bit of a diversion. Okay, so what is one thing you wish you had known when you started out on your own or going remotely?
Oh, going remote. I was just scared. My biggest fear was financial. I was under a lot of financial stress. I'd gone from a full-time income to embracing a life of uncertainty where I wasn't sure where my next job would come from and work would come from. I had a couple small projects lined up. They were not really big paying projects. So my main concern was trying to finance myself on the road and to keep developing this idea ahead of this blog called The Traveler. That was my biggest challenge, was financial. I was under a lot of financial stress, and unfortunately, when you are short on money and you are traveling, and traveling can be very, very stressful when you are unsure about what you're doing the next month and when your next paycheck is coming through.
How did you find that you overcame that?
I overcame it because I managed to make something stick, and I managed to create a kind of breakthrough project in my first year, which was my book. My first book, Luxury Hostels of Europe, which was an ebook, and it was a great success, with featured in The Guardian, New York Times. And if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't had that breakthrough project, then I don't think I would be here now. It might have taken me longer, maybe, but but that's just me, and that's the world of blogging and content. When you're remote working, I think it's important to have kind of a plan of where your work is coming from, and then just go for it. But my biggest tip for anyone is that if you really want to get into remote working and see what's out there, just go out there, network, and meet people. That's been my other biggest help, was that I met lots of really interesting people on the road, and some of those have led to work and further collaborations. So
nice. Oh, cool. So what is one story or memory that sums up your experience of remote living and working? Again, don't hold back.
That sums up my experience of remote working and living. Like
a fond memory, or like...
I would say that after 6 months of traveling remotely, I left Edinburgh in July 2012, and I committed to 6 months on the road to write the book. It was called The Luxury Hostels of Europe. I went to 30 different hostels. And then I took a pause in Berlin, and that was the point where my money was really running low, and I wasn't sure how I was going to survive, and I was already looking at flights back to Edinburgh. But I managed to find a very affordable flat in Berlin for the summer, and I remember spending 6 weeks there. I loved it because it opened my eyes to what is great when you travel slowly, as we talked about, and you embed yourself in a place that you never would have thought of ever experiencing. So I was in Berlin in the summer. If anybody's been in Berlin in the summer, it's an amazing place. And Berlin was already become a very popular place for creative people, and I met so many interesting people that summer. I ended up in co-working spaces. I can't remember the very popular co-working space in Berlin. It's a really legendary space, and it was free. You just have to buy a cup of coffee, and you could sit in the cafe of the co-working space. Good old days. Vita House.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I met a bunch of people. I had the best of my life. I networked gained lots of confidence, got lots of ideas from that. And that was the kind of springboard that summer in Berlin to many other future successful things. But just choosing to stop, pause, and spend that time in 6 weeks, yeah, it was great.
You talk quite a bit about networking and the importance and benefits of networking. Name a couple of places that you think are the best places to go network, particularly for travel, but if any others come to mind.
Yeah, I mentioned co-working spaces. Co-working spaces are great. They give you, they're like a home away from home. After your apartment, hostel, hotel, co-working spaces have everything. You'll find a kitchen there where you can cook. You'll find a cafe and you can have good coffee. You will have access to instant access and plug into all the events where you can meet and listen to local entrepreneurs from different backgrounds. And that's super exciting and inspiring when you're on the road. You get this luxury of access to everything instantaneously. That's what's good. And that's where you also network and meet people. And that's when the magic happens. And so that's my biggest tip is co-working spaces.
Great.
I use an app called Croissant. You want to pronounce it as, depending on your nationality.
My favourite one is Brazilians and the way they say croissant.
What do they say?
Croissante.
Croissante. There you go.
Croissante.
I love that.
I said croissant when I went over there and they were like, eh. So coming back, I was like, I want a cafe and a croissante.
Croissante. So the app Croissante gives you a lowdown of all co-working spaces you can find. It's like you can do it. You can go for a flexible membership of a couple of hours a week or a month. It's good.
I can't wait generally just for when more events like that can start up again. It's going to feel so good when we can all be in the same room, networking, catching up. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. Cannot wait. Okay, since March 2020, i.e. when we all first went into this big global lockdown for the majority of the world anyway, has there been any part of your business, like obviously apart from travel physically, that you have had to adjust or you pivoted or possibly, say, future-proofed for the future?
Yeah, the pivot, that was the word that was being thrown around a lot when the pandemic hit. Everybody was like, this pivot. Yeah, it's this. Yeah, 12 years of building a business and then just at a click of your hands, let's pivot.
I always think of Ross from Friends. Pivot.
Yeah, it's just this really fancy word that got thrown around a lot. And no, I didn't build a business for 12 years to just pivot.
Sure.
At the first sign of panic. As an entrepreneur, as a remote worker, you have to be ready to face up to the challenges that this unpredictability I mentioned.
Yes.
That this is very much a test of your resilience, of your willingness to embrace this lifestyle. A lot of people questioned whether, are you still doing this nomad thing? Still remote working because it's a pandemic now and suddenly travel became a dirty thing. And even if you're responsible traveling, wearing a mask, not going around partying like no tomorrow in Mexico, you're just moving around in your own pace, but you were keeping to yourself. And nothing against, but I want to say this.
No.
Who are in Mexico listening to this? Everybody has their own choice to make, and everybody should be free to do what works for them, and that's fine. And there should be that mutual respect there. And I respect for people who had the balls to go off and continue the lifestyle and continue traveling. It's tough. But, this whole, but we won't get into that.
No.
What I wanted to say was that I did not pivot. I did adjust. So all my passive income, which is one of the main sources of income, my blog disappeared, which is about 35 to 40%. A lot of people book hostels and hotels via my site. So all that income went. And so the only source of income that we had at the time was to basically pitch our content creation services when tourism would reopen again. So we had a long wait of 3-4 months for things to start again. And in those 3-4 months, I had basically, a lot of people said, you should be rewriting your old content and getting it ready for when tourism starts again. And I was so depressed and so it's not in a very good place. And then one day I was reading about horror stories of hostel friends who were struggling and hostels closing down. And I said, can we do something here to help these hostels and maybe spread word and people to help them? So me and a couple of friends, Charlotte and Rose, run an agency in London called Stay the Night. And I can't remember it. My dearest Canadian friend, he runs hostel management. we had this idea of setting up a voucher platform for hostels called Lior, if I remember this. And we raised €100,000 within 4 weeks of starting up this platform. And I'd never done anything like this, a project like this before. But we didn't make a cent from it, but it was just great to be useful.
It was so interactive.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't pivot. I did something completely different.
What was your take on, because obviously a lot of people, and I know myself included, we kind of started trying to do more like travel at home. I mean, I know you were on the events quite a bit, but you didn't get that go?
Oh, if you mean like climbing up on a staircase and climbing Everest, that was really impressive. And people who started converting their living rooms into cabin class and then looking up through the window of their washing machine and acting as if they were traveling. No, I didn't do that. Virtual events were fantastic. Yes. They were a lifesaver. As you very well know, your old colleagues, and they kept us sane. They also reminded me of one of the reasons why I fell in love with the whole industry that I'm in, and that remote working is about community. And if there's no community, it's so important to have community, because they are the pillars of support when things are not going well and you need to talk to someone, or you need some help on the feedback and ideas. So they pulled me through the whole lockdown period.
I was going to ask you if you think there's anything from the pandemic, like a trend or any particular kind of content or virtual events. I know we're kind of sick of them by now, but do you think there's anything from the pandemic that we could be seeing going forward? Or we'll talk a bit more about trends in a minute, but
I think from the pandemic, it's been clear that one of the things I expressed, I did a little white paper on the future of influencers and for European cities marketing. And one of the things I said that my hope was that post-pandemic, it's been a very tough, challenging period for people in the industry of working as content creators. But my hope was that we would emerge more conscious about our travel decisions and how we make travel decisions and how we understand the impact that our travel decisions have on places we go, the people we meet, the communities, and that we would be more kind of conscious and invest in promoting the right places and things. And I think it's going to be a huge trend. I wouldn't call it a trend. I think it's just something that makes common sense. I'm already seeing that. And I definitely think that the trend that you pointed out of slow travel, this will be a huge trend to come. And destinations will stop moving away from focusing on high spend luxury tourists and start looking at tourists that really give a damn about their destination and their locals and are willing to invest in their destination emotionally and also financially. I think that's my hope. And that's what I think. That's where I think things are going.
I agree. 100%. I actually agree. So, final question. Do you have any thoughts or predictions on what the next step for travel content could be? Also, thinking from now onwards.
I would like to think that in terms of the future of travel and content, that we are entering into an era of more conscious travel, where we are more clued up about the impact of our lifestyle, of the choices we make, and that we accordingly invest financially and emotionally into places we go to. And in terms of content, my hope is that that content will start reflecting more about people, places, and not be just about the most Instagrammable places to go, for example, which still seems to be a thing. I just wish for travel to be more human and for content to be more about humans and more about stories and places rather than just about laying trends that come and go. I just think if one thing this pandemic has taught us, that travel is, at its basic essence, is all about connection and about people and about...
More mindful.
Yeah. Just being mindful and it's just about going out, having a beer, talking to a stranger, and just feeling that your life is bigger than what you think it is and it's full of endless possibilities. And I think our travel, the way we write about travel, should reflect that. And that's my goal going forward. And
beautiful.
I need to be reminded of constantly.
Beautiful. Love it. Amazing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Remote Worker. And thank you, Kash, for your knowledgeable insights. You can find links to Kash's white paper, digital nomad guide, and his book, and other bits and bobs that we talked about in the links below. And hey, come and let us know what you thought on Twitter and Instagram. You can find Kash at Budget Traveller and myself, Han, at Han Meets World. The podcast is also on Instagram at the Remote Worker Podcast. And finally, what are your thoughts on the next steps for travel? Thank you so much again for tuning in, and hopefully we'll be remote working with you again soon.